Hachiko was my grandfather Wilson's dog.
Go ahead. Go ahead. No. The ball.
Hachi! They taught me the meaning of loyalty. That you shouldn't.
He's not coming back.
Accompanied by someone new, Kate stopped by the station to remember her late husband. Instead, she faced a sight she never expected. Even after 10 long years, Hachiko remained there, loyal as ever, waiting for a reunion that would never come. His eyes were dull, his coat matted and unkempt. He was no longer the lively dog he once had been. Kate had moved forward with her life and built a new chapter. Hachiko, however, remained in the same place, loyal and unmoving. A decade had gone by. Even people struggle to promise devotion for that long, yet the dog continued to wait. An elderly coffee vendor nearby wiped away tears. Perhaps he had witnessed the hardship Hachiko endured year after year. Hachiko recognized Kate, yet his gaze kept drifting toward the arriving passengers. He seemed afraid that if he looked away too long, he might miss the one person he longed to see. Years earlier, their story began at that very station. On a crowded evening, the small dog crossed paths with Parker, a music professor heading home after work. Parker immediately sensed that the well-groomed puppy was not a stray. When the final train departed and no owner appeared, Parker spoke with the station office. They agreed to keep the dog overnight. If no one claimed him by morning, he would be transferred to an animal shelter. Sensing there was little hope, Parker decided to take the dog home. Since Kate did not want another pet, he settled the puppy in his study downstairs. Kate noticed nothing unusual at first. She greeted her husband warmly and mentioned she had prepared a surprise. Parker replied awkwardly that he might have a surprise too. As they headed upstairs, he hoped the puppy would stay quiet. Instead, the dog slipped through the door and bounded into their bedroom, interrupting them. Kate did not hate animals. They once had a dog, but the pain of losing it made her decide never to go through that heartbreak again. Understanding her feelings, Parker promised to find a solution the next day and asked to let the puppy sleep in the shed for one night. Kate agreed reluctantly. Parker prepared a small bed with blankets and even placed a stuffed toy beside him. After turning off the light, Parker noticed the puppy standing frozen in the dark. He switched the light back on, and the faint glow seemed to calm him. Once alone, the dog sat by the door, watching quietly. Though silent, his eyes carried longing. The following morning, their daughter Andy discovered the puppy and instantly adored him. She begged her parents to keep him. Parker saw a glimmer of hope, but Kate quickly printed adoption notices. Her decision was firm, leaving no room for debate. When Parker brought the dog to the shelter, he learned they were full. They could only keep him for 2 weeks. If no family stepped forward, he would be put down. Unable to accept that outcome, Parker sought help from a friend who owned a bookstore. The friend liked the dog, but an orange cat there constantly intimidated him. Parker decided it was not the right place. After several failed attempts to rehome him, Parker realized he had grown attached. At the coffee stand, he joked about giving the dog to the old vendor. The man shrugged and said owning a dog meant constant responsibility, walks, meals, baths. Parker stayed silent. To someone who loves a dog, it is not about chores. It is about connection. Running late for work, Parker brought the dog to school. As expected, he proved difficult to manage. He chewed through a button and darted off. Inside the classroom, filled with music, the dog explored with curiosity. Later, a Japanese colleague informed Parker that the dog was an Akita. The collar bore the character, associated with good fortune in Japan. Parker named him Hachiko. When he asked the colleague about adoption, the man smiled and said Hachiko had already chosen his owner. From that day on, he would remain faithful. To persuade Kate, Parker even rolled around on the floor playing with Hachiko. Kate watched in disbelief. Just as Parker tried to make his case, a crash echoed from another room. Hachiko had ruined a handmade craft Kate had spent months completing. They were sent out of the house, and that night Hachiko stayed locked in the shed. Wind roared outside as a storm passed through. From a narrow gap, Hachiko watched his owners argue. He seemed to sense he was the cause and lay quietly on his small bed waiting. Later, Parker returned quietly and brought him back inside, unwilling to leave him alone. After the argument, Parker chose the couch over the bedroom. He and Hachiko watched a baseball game together and shared popcorn. When Kate came downstairs, Parker had fallen asleep. As she reached to turn off the television, Hachiko gently licked her hand. She glanced at him, still holding back her feelings. Parker woke and apologized repeatedly. Seeing his sincerity, Kate began to reconsider her stance. The next day, Parker attempted to teach Hachiko to fetch. He assumed an intelligent Akita would master it quickly. Instead, Hachiko ignored the ball as if he simply had no interest in the game. Parker didn't mind and kept playing with the dog, eventually becoming the one everyone teased. While that was going on, Kate received a phone call. Someone had seen the adoption flyers and was interested in taking Hachiko. She was excited and about to write down the address, but when she looked up, she saw her husband laughing in the yard with Hachiko, and Andy had joined them. Moments like that had been missing from their home for a long time. Kate was not cold-hearted. Slowly, her resistance faded. From that day forward, Hachiko officially stayed with them. Surrounded by affection and care, the dog grew into a large Akita with a glossy coat. As the years passed, Hachiko became increasingly attached to Parker. Whenever Parker left for work, Hachiko would lie near the small hole in the yard, watching him walk away. One day, unable to bear the loneliness, Hachiko dug through and escaped. As Parker waited at the station, he suddenly saw Hachiko appear. He stared in disbelief. He had never imagined the dog could locate the station on its own. After a brief reunion filled with affection, Parker told Hachiko to return home. But the dog insisted on following him. With no other option, Parker missed his train and walked Hachiko back, filling in the hole once again. Before leaving, he firmly told Hachiko not to run off anymore. As if aware of its mistake, Hachiko stayed put. The next morning felt long and dull for the dog. Later that afternoon, the distant sound of a train whistle caught its attention. Reacting instantly, Hachiko leaped over the barrier and ran toward the station. It settled on a flower bed near the entrance and waited quietly. Soon enough, Parker stepped out of the station. The moment Hachiko saw him, its eyes shone brightly. It rushed forward and jumped into his arms. Parker felt both surprised and touched. Coming home to such enthusiasm was impossible to resist. He assumed Kate had brought the dog, but the coffee vendor explained that Hachiko had arrived alone. The station employees noticed as well. They regretted not seeing the dog arrive. The following day, Hachiko trailed Parker again. After telling it to go back, Parker paused when he saw the pleading look in the dog's eyes. With a sigh, he gave in. From then on, Hachiko became part of his daily routine. Each morning, Hachiko accompanied Parker to the station, then quietly returned home. In the afternoon, exactly at 5, it would sit on the same flower bed, waiting for the train. The instant Parker appeared in the crowd, Hachiko would dash forward to greet him. Over time, townspeople grew accustomed to the sight of them together. Not long after, Andy introduced her boyfriend, Michael, to the family. Hoping to ease the atmosphere, Michael tried playing fetch with Hachiko. He threw the ball and asked the dog to retrieve it. Hachiko ignored him completely. Parker explained that Hachiko never played fetch. Relieved, Michael went to pick up the ball himself, only to stumble and fall, making the situation more awkward. Years earlier, Parker had asked a Japanese friend about this behavior. His friend explained that Akitas do not retrieve objects simply to entertain people. If they do, there is usually a meaningful reason. Parker did not think much of it at the time. Until one morning, when Hachiko began acting strangely. When Parker called it to leave for work, Hachiko backed away. Then it spun in circles and barked loudly, as if trying to stop him. Pressed for time, Parker calmed the dog and left. The moment he was out of sight, Hachiko ran to the storage room, grabbed the ball it had always ignored, and hurried to the station. Parker glanced over his shoulder and saw Hachiko racing to catch up. Before he entered the station, the dog reached him. To his astonishment, Hachiko retrieved the ball when he tossed it. Amused and impressed, Parker threw it again. Hachiko brought it back once more. Smiling proudly, Parker even showed the train attendant nearby. The warning from his friend slipped from his mind. As he hurried inside to avoid missing the train, he saw Hachiko spinning again. He gently reassured the dog. "Be good. I'll see you at 5, he said before boarding. Hachiko watched the train disappear down the tracks, its expression unusually heavy. Later, while teaching in class, Parker absent-mindedly held the ball as if Hachiko were beside him. Suddenly, he felt a sharp pain and collapsed, the ball rolling from his hand. He never regained consciousness. At 5 o'clock, commuters poured out of the station. Parker did not appear. The sky darkened. The crowd thinned. Yet Hachiko remained on the flowerbed, waiting faithfully, unaware that its owner would never return. He remained at the station until late at night, and Parker never appeared. Then a beam of light fell across his face. Michael had come to bring him home. That evening, through a narrow crack in the wall, Hachiko sensed the heaviness inside the house. The voices of Parker's wife and daughter were soft and strained. Even without understanding the words, he could feel that something was wrong. The next day, the family held Parker's funeral. Friends and relatives gathered to say goodbye to a man they cherished. Hachiko was the only one absent. As usual, before 5 in the afternoon, he was already seated on the flowerbed facing the station entrance, waiting for his master's return. He could not grasp the meaning of grief or read the expressions on people's faces. He studied every passenger stepping off the train, but Parker was never among them. When the final train departed that night, Hachiko was still there. A conductor, moved by the sight, approached and gently tried to shoo him away. In the end, he too walked off. Snow began to fall more heavily. Hachiko did not understand death. In his mind, if his master had left from that place, he would one day come back the same way. Later, Kate left the town filled with memories. Hachiko went to live with Andy and Michael. As he looked at the house where he had grown up, he felt unwilling to leave. The new home was comfortable. He even had a small bed of his own. Still, he seemed withdrawn, constantly longing for Parker. One afternoon, as Michael returned from work, Hachiko suddenly bolted out the door, unable to contain his yearning. Michael called after him, but he would not stop. Hachiko ran through the snow-covered woods toward the familiar railway. Following the tracks, guided by instinct and memory, he made his way back to his old house. But everything inside had changed. Strangers now filled the space. Realizing he no longer belonged there, he turned and ran back to the station where he had first met Parker. Ignoring curious stares, he settled once more on the flower bed across from the entrance. The man who once complained that dogs were troublesome was now touched by his devotion and offered him a hot dog. Soon Andy and Michael arrived. After much coaxing, Hachiko finally climbed into their car. Yet back at home, he refused food and water. He lay quietly, distant and sad. Andy tried to comfort him, but nothing worked. Then a train whistle echoed in the distance. Hachiko lifted his head and hurried to the fence, eyes shining with hope. Andy understood. Without hesitation, he ran back to the station. This time, he chose to stay. From that day on, he became a stray. Each day he returned to the flower bed and resumed his vigil. For him, waiting meant hope. Every person stepping through the station doors might be Parker. His tail would stir at the smallest possibility. Because Parker had been well-liked, neighbors made sure Hachiko never went hungry. He arrived early each morning and only left when the old coffee vendor closed his stand late at night. Eventually, his story reached the newspapers. People from different places were moved by his faithfulness. They sent food and donations. The station manager began looking after him. Parker's friends from Japan read about him as well and traveled far to see him. They did not try to convince him to stop waiting. In a dog's world, his life still stretched ahead. Remaining there gave him purpose. Through blooming springs and harsh winters, Hachiko stayed on the flower bed. For 10 years he waited at the station. His devotion endured until his final breath. On the 10th anniversary of Parker's death, Kate returned to visit. After the memorial service, as she prepared to leave, she noticed an aged stray dog making his way slowly toward the station. His coat was dull and dirty. His body had grown thin and frail. Each step up the stairs was careful and unsteady. Yet he pressed on, determined to reach the place where he always searched for his master. After some time, he managed to climb onto the flower bed. He turned and faced the station doors once more. Drawn by shock, she approached slowly. One glance was enough to confirm it. The aging stray was Hachiko, and with that the story ends here. Loyalty is proven through actions, not words, and Hachiko showed unwavering devotion by waiting every day without fail. Love creates routines that become meaningful, even in silence and absence. True faithfulness does not depend on circumstances, it endures even when there is no reward.